Hi, my name's Bob Greenyer, and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So, welcome this Sunday, the 9th of June, to THOR Smokeout. How are we all? Can you hear me? Can you hear me out there in the webs? Is it too loud? Am I clipping? Maybe I should turn that down a little. Okay, excellent. Well, what a couple of weeks it's been. I have to first make a big thank you to those people that helped support the trip to Japan and Taiwan. Got a couple of things to say about those in the coming days. But I was very lucky to be able to capture 141 kilograms of the life's work of Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto. And I have to thank Stephen for this trip, for helping enable that in large part, and also Sho for helping me on the ground, and all the small donors that made that possible also. And also Malcolm Bendel made a donation to the project, having seen the 6 23.5 kilogram suitcases that I was trying to bring back. And that was very kind of him to donate to the project at that time to enable the capture of those materials back into safe hands. It is going to take a year, possibly two, to process that material. But if it is possible to do what I want to achieve, then I think it will be the most detailed record of a potential earth-shattering discovery ever made, in that it will include all of the original lab notebooks, listing the schematics, the reagents, the elements, the protocols, what current, how it was applied, and so forth. The radiographic plates, the scanning electron microscopy photographs, the macro photographs or microscope photographs and photographs, and also videos of the experiments. Now, I don't know if everything is there, but I can tell you some of the most interesting images that are in the book, but are not that clear in the book. We do have either prints of the original negatives, but in most cases, and possibly all cases, we actually have the negatives. And in the case of some of the negatives that come from an SEM, they're actually quite large format. So it's going to be a breathtaking archive. And it was a deep honor to spend some time with the family. I have a wonderful recording taken with 2 cameras at 8K of a book that was prepared by Matsumoto about his life story, told from the recollections of the wife and the daughter, one of the children, and in the room there was Sho, and there was the former director of Hokkaido University, who actually didn't really interchange much with Dr. Matsumoto, but I asked them to just speak freely in Japanese. I didn't want any translation issues to get in the way with me being involved in that conversation. I just focused on the filming. And it was really totally deep honor to be in the room of this Japanese family, laughing and joking about a life story and their experiences. And even about 50 minutes or about an hour in, it runs for about an hour and 20 minutes, the wife, she turns around and says, where's Bob gone? She'd completely forgotten that I was even in the room, and it was a magical experience, really, and the quality it's captured at, it's going to stand the test of time. So yeah, thank you to everyone that helped support that. Thank you, Vanilla Isis, for your donation right now. Totally special moment recorded there. So I'm going to share a couple of images over the coming days of the ridiculous amount of baggage. It was funny because they had this. I bought these bags, which are kind of like those expandable, kind of slightly oversized luggage you would maybe take into the cabin, and they have like an expansion joint on them. And the ladies at the check-in counter, I mean, the excess baggage was about $1,000. It's just absurd. And when she went to lift one of these bags, she said, "Oh my God, why is this 23.5 kilograms?" I don't think she'd ever experienced such a small bag weighing so much. And the person doing the check-in said, "What have you got in there? Gold?" I said, "No, it's more valuable than gold." Something along those lines. Anyway, so yeah, it was an interesting experience. And Yin Gazda met me at Vienna Airport. That is Yin, the former partner of John Hutchison, and she helped escort the documents with me to their final destination. So, yeah, really special experience out there. I think at the conference I'm going to auction the 4, it's now 4 because Show took one, maybe it's 5, remaining copies of the original print run that Matsumoto did himself. That's the one that looks like my one here, the yellow copy of his book. Yeah, there's only 4 left in existence of the original print run. I'm also going to, and I'll show this in a separate blog in the next couple of days, I'm going to bring some large format prints of some of the incredible SEMs that I got from the analysis of the DHX2 from Binchuan Huang. I printed those onto, I think it's A1 vinyl, and they've been signed by myself and Binchuan Huang when I was in Taiwan. And we're going to auction those off, and this will help the work of the MFMP. There will be an opportunity to buy a piece of history. So if we find that we've captured authentically a image either from a photograph that has been printed or a negative, and it's interesting because some of the negatives have decayed, and so the actual photograph is the best source, whereas in other cases the negative is the best source. So there will be sometimes negatives up for grabs and sometimes photographs up for grabs, and how that goes I don't know, but the idea is that we can raise the money to do this incredible document, or rather maybe document and online resource for people to replicate his findings and to delve into the mind that was Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto. Right, so that being said, you want me to raise the volume? I can actually raise the volume. It's about 10 dB below. Is that too loud? I think I'm going to clip if I put it at this level. So let me know how that gets on. Okay, so THOR Smokeout. Well, as you already know, we did some testing down in Santa Cruz in California there a couple of weeks ago, myself, Phil Dubois, and it was good. It was good, okay. I know if I turn it up too much, it clips, so okay, I'll leave it at minus 10 dB. Or maybe I'll put it up and then turn it down here. Okay, how is that for people? Don't want to clip it. Don't want distortion. Okay. Okay, excellent. So, yeah, so you can see Phil here, he has some incense sticks. And there is some smoke being produced. And how we got there, well, first off, we did a control run and a active run. And we found that in the control run, we got to see these smoky additions. These, how should we put them? Unburnt hydrocarbons here and here, because I think it's 117 or something petrol, but you can see some fractions here and here which are not in the Thunderstorm active run here. And you can also see here at the 12 line, there's a high level of carbon there, much lower here. There is a much higher level of hydrogen and a much lower level here. So this implies there's much cleaner burning going on of the hydrocarbons. Okay. Now, what was also interesting is we did see CO2. So CO2 is, this is 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. It's this peak here. But this is a logarithmic scale here. So this peak translates over here. And this peak is the peak for CO2. It's much higher. Okay. And then O2 is 32. Of course, sulfur 32 would be that anyway. But you can see here on the control run, the 32 line is actually higher than it is on the 30 line. Okay. Now, in the review I did on the day or on the subsequent day, which I have already published, I noted what I've just shown you there, that the carbon dioxide was significantly higher on the control run over the TSG, and the oxygen was higher on the TSG than the control run. Okay, and this analysis here was done by Camilla Urbina down in South America. So thank you, Camilo. And here are his comments. I just looked for the peak CO2 pressure in millibar in both the Thunderstorm generator run and the control run, and the peak CO2 pressure of the control is 4.51 times the peak CO2 pressure of the Thunderstorm generator. In the case of oxygen, the peak O2 pressure of the control is 0.47 times the peak O2 pressure of the TSG. Now, there has been water injection technology since I think the 1920s that have claimed to do cleaner burns of the fuel that goes into an internal combustion engine. And the other consideration here, therefore, is that this is not an entirely new technology. However, that being said, the CO2 was expected to be lower and much lower, and this is kind of much lower, but you have to ask the question, is there some kind of mixing, flow mixing going on that is potentially causing that? And so, you know, we're an open and independent testing organization, and, you know, that is our role. In this instance and in other instances in the past, we have shown things that haven't necessarily met the expectation of the claimant or their claims. So in this case, clearly there is CO2. It's not down to basically zero. Now, what I've said about the electrodynamic clusters, these fractal toroidal structures, is that they have a continuum of operation. They have a continuum from, you know, potentially splitting polar bonds, as in the case of water, and causing water gas. Interestingly, MIT, I think this week, said that exposing light onto water causes non-thermal evaporation of water. So that is a formation of water gas without using thermal energy. Now, the other interesting thing that they have not mentioned is that if you take, for instance, a laser and you point that at something, according to Shishkin and others, that actually captures exotic vacuum objects that are in the air, and they travel down the laser beam to the target. So I need to look into that particular piece of data from MIT and see how they did that. However, that aside, that's the polar bonds. Then I'm saying it can potentially break chemical bonds. And that comes into the whole notion of catalysis. So normally when you're doing chemistry, you have an energy requirement in order to get the chemical, the molecules or whatever, to interact. And so that's kind of a threshold that you have to get over. And so catalysis is a process by which you lower the energy necessary to get the chemical reaction to occur. And one of the things that was useful with being at Aarhus a number of years back was I had the pleasure of having dinner with a French expert in catalysis. In fact, I think he's the expert in the world. Can't remember his name, but you know, I could go back and find out his name. And he also gave a lecture that I attended the following day. And the kind of suggestion is that no one actually really knows what's going on in catalysis. But so he presented this kind of like there is a energy put in and then got back at the end, and so some sort of a circle of catalysis he was presenting there. Could it be that, and the actual reality is a lot of catalysts are either paramagnetic or they have an ability to interact with hydrogen, which is this polar molecule, atomic hydrogen. It has a little magnetic moment. So they're either paramagnetic or ferromagnetic. So they're iron and its oxides or other compounds, and nickel and its other compounds, or nickel in some kind of particular form, like rainy nickel or something. They tend to be these kind of elements, and they do tend to be metals, which means there's a sea of electrons on the surface. Could it be, and they also tend to have very high surface areas, which have little like traps in which you could imagine there were clusters of electrons. Could it be that catalysis is actually a manifestation of this overall process at a very, very low level? So possibly at the polar bonding breaking level, the chemical bonding level, breaking level, but it's not at the nuclear interaction level, and certainly not at the baryon decay or nuclear synthesis level. But we know from the work of David Freiberger that those things occur at a very, very specific critical threshold. Okay, if you do not reach that critical threshold, you will not have baryon decay, and presumably then not electronuclear regeneration. Okay, so electronuclear collapse, electronuclear regeneration, those things will not occur if the cluster is not sufficiently organized. And we know from the cavitation work of Suhas Ralkar that his fuel, according to Suhas Ralkar, did absolutely nothing until he had cavitated it for about 200 hours. So whatever he had to do, he had to wind those things up into a state of energetic vorticity, fractal levels, such that then it could start doing the work. So it might be that there is this continuum from polar to chemical to nuclear to electronuclear collapse and electronuclear regeneration. And really, where do you want to be on that spectrum? Where do you want to be on that spectrum with a domestic product that you're going to be putting into people's cars or other internal combustion engine devices? I was very clear from the beginning. I only got involved with the Thunderstorm generator when I was sent by someone these glowy things coming out of the device and going back in. That piqued my interest because they looked pretty darn like the things that we had been generating with Ethereum in Holland and David Boutelier in Canada. And these are coherent matter traveling waves in my view, and they come out of blowing up ball lightning or even potentially active ball lightning in an unstable state. And we've obviously imaged those, and similar things were coming out of a GEET reactor. And at the time we were looking in and actually doing some experiments in the GEET reactor. But in the case of the GEET independent replicators that had observed this, they had seen these things flying out. There was videos, a couple of videos where they came out and they just continued out. In the case of the Thunderstorm generator, they were coming out and going back in. And so I suggested that this was a signature of ball lightning, and if it was, there would be iron-rich crenellated microspheres, and then there was iron-rich crenellated microspheres. But the sphere on which the things were coming out and going in was a small unit, one of the type of ones that we put on this generator in California. The one that we analyzed was this 24-inch sphere that was run for around about 500 hours in Melbourne over the course of about 8 years on a 400 kVA generator. On reflection, the number of crenellated iron-rich spheres that are inside that thing, are they generated over a long period of time, or could it have been such that there was a particular set of parameter space, temperature, flow rate, vibration in the system, humidity? Was it a particular set of parameters that took it through that David Freiberger critical threshold, where you get the what he calls the baryon losing its reference to the Dirac sea, and the baryon collapses? That would be equivalent to the electronuclear collapse of Takaaki Matsumoto, and then that would lead to your electronuclear regeneration. Could it be that it's just the intense magnetic fields that's aggregating the ferromagnetic material out of the steel and producing these iron-rich crenellated microspheres? I don't know, but what I do know is that in much shorter experiments, for instance, in the 100-hour experiment of Henk Urien, the Vega Valley, where we saw large numbers of these iron-rich crenellated spheres and the signatures of blowing up microball lightning and ball lightning. And in the 900-second experiment of Alan Goldwater, where we saw the iron-rich crenellated spheres, these are, in the case of the Henk Urien experiment, 1/5 of the time, and in the case of the 15-minute experiment of Alan Goldwater, incredibly small fractions of 500 hours. So could it have been that most of those iron-rich crenellated microspheres were generated in a very, very small time frame in the overall 500 hours that ran for? And in the other 500 hours, it was operating in this catalysis regime where it was ensuring a clean burn. Because for me, the most important thing with this potential device is a cheap replacement for a catalytic converter. If you don't have to spend $1,000 on the catalytic converter, that is to say, if you have a catalytic converter and it's costing $1,000 and you put that on your driveway and you haven't got the rest of the car, well, maybe you've used the equivalent of, let's say, 25,000 miles worth of hydrocarbons to mine and refine and engineer the platinum and rhodium that's in that catalytic converter, right? Before you've even driven a single mile in the car. And as I said, in India, I would like to see this potential technology, if it pans out, cleaning up the air, the kind of air that made your eyes go red and sandy, and your nose feel like it was streaming. The kind of air that kids are growing up in their millions in Asia and the subcontinent. It could affect hundreds of millions of people just cleaning it up. So when the CO2 data came in, that you can see the effect of here, I had to tell Malcolm, I said, in this particular mode of operation, perhaps there is different modes of operation, but in this particular mode, in probably the best build of fil de bois of a thunderstorm generator, using a long-term reliable thunderstorm generator that is well charged, as he might describe it, there is CO2. It's at a lower level, and we'll come on to other thoughts about that later down the line. But the CO2 is there, and it's vastly above natural atmospheric levels. And Malcolm, there is no possible way you can concentrate that with what you're looking at there. You can concentrate that very, very, very small percentage of CO2 naturally in the atmosphere to produce this continuous stream of a far higher concentration of CO2 being detected by the quadrupole mass spectrometer. And he accepted that. And so, maybe there are other modes in which that is not the case. But in this case, it did appear to do a cleaner burn, and it did appear to do a, how should we put this, remove the carbon. So that ideally, one might say that is removing these P5 and P10 particles that are so bad for your lungs, and the carbon monoxide, which is potentially a killer. I have two provisos. One, I have since found out what I suspected, that the air is also being breathed in through the air intake as well as through the bubbler. So the water hammer effect, whilst being real because the pressure drop is removed and it's not a massive pressure increase from steam formation in the thunderstorm generator that's pushing back on that. It's just the drop of vacuum that's causing a bit of a water hammer effect there. So the water hammer effect isn't as intense as I initially thought, because there is another way the air can come in. And then secondly, I have a reservation about the use of the choke. And so from my point of view, a lot more testing needs to be done. Because if you are using the choke to make it run smoothly, the question is, are you leaning the burn? Are you effectively allowing less fuel relative to air into the engine anyway? And then it's more hard to disambiguate or to separate out what is the component of the clean burn that's coming from the water injection and the steam and the thermal recycling and so forth, those aspects of it, and the vorticity and maybe the charge clusters that are going in, what component is doing what in terms of the overall effect. So a lot more testing has to occur. I think at this stage, I have not done this test, and for various reasons I'll come into, we could not do this test. I wanted to turn off the light and see if it made a difference. I suspect it doesn't. I would like to think that it's not actually that useful, because it's a complication in terms of a simple device. What I would like to see is a simple device where if you go to India, I think the average rickshaw cost, this is the auto rickshaw, what you would call a tuk-tuk in Thailand, they cost around about, in India, an average of about $1,700. You can get some for a lot cheaper than that, and you can get some for a lot more. There's a range of different, finishes you can have, and the canopy styles, and anyway, there's a lot of different ones, but let's say the average is $1,700. No way are you going to convince a person buying a rickshaw, for an auto rickshaw, for their little auto rickshaw business of picking people up and dropping people off, or picking up cargo and dropping that off. No way are you going to get them to buy a $1,000 platinum rhodium filled ceramic matrix catalytic converter. It's just not going to happen. However, if you could achieve similar through whatever means, and we're going to come on to what I mean by that, cleanliness of air coming out of that engine without a significant shortening of the engine's life, and without a significant loss in power, both of which, or range, both of which might be non-starters for the people you're trying to convince to add these. If you could achieve, without loss of performance, the same kind of thing that you get from a catalytic converter, but let's say this is because it's essentially just steel, and maybe only costing, let's say, $40, $50 to produce in bulk. If the actual Thunderstorm generator itself is sufficient to create most of the effect, then that for me is the hugest win possible. The hugest win possible. And particularly, I don't care what's going on. And I had time to reflect on this over the last couple of weeks when I had the pleasure of finding this presentation by one James Griggs about his hydrosonic pump. In the hydrosonic pump, there are absolutely cavitation processes going on, and they are absolutely critical to what is going on. This video, if you haven't seen it, it's a killer video. It goes into so many different phenomena that he could not explain, which are similar phenomena to what John Hutchison had observed, that Ken Shoulders had investigated prior to the Griggs device, and that other people like Kladoff and Leclerc and Ralcar and Huang et al. And ourselves have observed since. And some of them are literally the same observation, but he had no explanation for them back then. So that in itself is incredible. I have no idea why that video has never been public, but it is now public. You must go and see it. But there was one thing that really stood out in that video for me. And that was that he said when he was claiming over unity of maybe 30, 40, up to 60, whatever % in the heat production over the electricity put in, he had 0 sales. 0. He couldn't sell it. No one was interested. The university wasn't interested, and so forth. So he thought, well, he's a practical, pragmatic man. Let's not talk about those things. Let's change all of our marketing and just say that this is as efficient as a normal electric heater, i.e. you get 100% of your heat in thermal from the electricity you put in. And he did say, well, actually, that's not true, because a normal immersion heater, let's say, it's good when you start, but then it gets covered in limescale or whatever, and it starts to degrade in its performance, where his device doesn't, because it's self-cleaning. Okay, putting that aside, his marketing materials went on the offensive that this is just a different way to heat water as efficiently as an immersion heater, an electric resistive heater. And the sales came flooding in. And in fact, the Griggs hydrosonic turbine became a very successful business that he sold for a good sum of money inside his patent window. And the same company, or a version of that company, exists today after his death. He died in 2018 at the age of 68. His father died in January 2024 at the age of 97. And there's something to consider there. given the fact that James Griggs died of cancer, and Matsumoto died of cancer, and Yuji Bajatov died of cancer, and Ken Shoulders died of cancer, and Shishkin has shown that 1 hour exposure to his cavitator would kill red blood cells and do DNA damage to white blood cells. Okay, so, you know, just that's something to consider. But he made a successful company that produces products that are bought to this very day in a range of markets. So I have to ask myself, and I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, okay, so what would happen if someone reported that a lot of the devices that they were putting on their auto rickshaws were producing these kind of plasma things that were coming out and going back in? And no one would want to put them on their engines. They just wouldn't. It's like you go to the experts and the experts say, I don't know what that is. Yeah, but it looks like it's a plasma thing. And it's like, okay, not sure I want that hanging around in my car. It's not going to happen, is it? So is it that important, or is it even that helpful that it might be doing electronuclear collapse and electronuclear regeneration? We don't even know for certain that that is going on. The signatures are there that some point it's likely to have happened. Again, that's why I got interested into looking into this. But I have not seen a device that has the things coming in and out. And right now I'm kind of happy about that, because I don't think any regulatory body in the world would allow that to be put on a car. Unknown plasma-y things coming in and out, not sure we want that on everyone's engines. But a thing that replaces the catalytic converter and is a small fraction of the cost and can therefore be implemented on some of the most polluting vehicles in the world, radically changing the life prospects of people living in those mega cities in the subcontinent and Asia. Yep, I think we want some of that. So, you know, I learned that huge takeaway from the Griggs presentation, that you might want it to do this magic. You might really, get a trip out of it doing this magic. But is it useful to achieve the actual goal that you want to do, which is to clean up the air? You know, humans can breathe 6% CO2 all day long, every day of the week, right? It's on the threshold of what you should be breathing, but you can, okay? Plants love CO2, so, you know, do we really want to get rid of it? Next week, maybe we will have the isotopic data in from Finland. I do hope it comes before the conference. If we see a significant sulfur-32 low level compared to sulfur-34, so a high 34 over 32 level, or a high nitrogen-15 over nitrogen-14, or a high carbon-13 over carbon-12, then potentially we can say that it is doing a nuclear level of interaction. However, what we can't say is it's completely getting rid of the CO2, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. So where I am with the Thunderstorm generator will be informed by what I'm to share with you now, and it will explain to a degree the changes in concentration of gases observed. It might even go some way to at least draw a little bit of shade on the carbon-14 data. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think, given what Griggs said, I think it might be a very positive thing. Let's still hope that it's doing the cleaner burn and there's no damage to the engine. And that is why testing, and open testing by independent parties is absolutely critical. Okay. All right. So, So this was our testing setup for the active run, and we had a control run where the generator was unmodified. Okay, and let's check where I am with the next slide. So let me see what I want to do. Okay. All right, we'll see. I've got to work out whether how I can get the audio coming through. Just give me a second here. I need to load up loopback. Okay, I'm gonna, hopefully you can hear this when I play these videos. Okay. Hi, Malcolm, you are in the room. Did you speak to Phil Dubois, who was trying to contact you for most of the day? So, in the background, you have Phil Dubois here, and in the foreground, you have the Thunderstorm generator and this thing, which no one commented on. No one commented on. Anyway, this was as it was for the actual testing. And I will play this video here now, and hopefully you will hear the audio. So, just might be using Ventura or effect or Vortex. Yeah, got this of info here. This is Lumina fibers or temperature sometimes. So, okay, all right, I get it. The audio is bad. Let me see what I can do about that. Audio is choppy. All right, I'm not going to bounce it through the way I was doing it. I will do it some other way. It was choppy, was it? Okay, I'll try and bounce it from my microphone here. I will kill loopback, and we will see if that is better. Sorry about that. I will drop the second mic next to the device, and let's hope this is better. I don't know, I'm going to just use one mic. Scramble my noodle. Okay, let's see if we can fix that for you. Sorry, this might be a bit scratchy as I fiddle with my microphone here. Right. Let's try that again. Tell me whether this works. So, just because this might be producing its own sort of like Venturi effect or tornado effect or whatever, and we know that there's a vortex coming down here, I've got this, piece of alumina. Let's get that in focus here. This is a piece of alumina kind of fibers, or rather, I don't know, high temperature fibers of some type. Sort you would insulate stuff with. And I'm hoping we can put this in here long enough to see where the flow is on this device. And I'm going to find a way of fixing the focus here by putting it into Pro mode. So give me a second and I'll do that. So the question here was, as we were getting some mixing, the first thought would be that there was mixing coming from the air. Now, this was the same kind of distance that we had from the control generator, from its exhaust, but the control generator's exhaust muffler was a very different shape, and I will look at that in a second. But first, the next video in this series. So the plan is, we have obviously Vortex coming down here out of the Thunderstorm generator's exhaust, and we have this thing that might be producing some sort of vortices coming around here. Around here is a temperature differential, so we're going to see what happens with this high temperature piece of gossamer-like thread here. Maybe it'll blow off instantaneously, I don't know, but we'll see when we put it in here.
Ready?
Yeah. Thanks to Alan Goldwater for making that.
I do not have extreme confidence in this work.
Well, something will happen. It always
Something
does.
will definitely happen. That I do have extreme confidence. Something will happen.
You were not confident about some other things as well.
What was I confident about?
Well,
I told you not to bring that up.
that you're going to survive this journey.
Oh, I always.
You made it.
I'm always confident, man.
Yeah, come on then.
Oh, I know I'll survive. I might not be happy, but I'll survive.
Right, I'm going to get out of the way because I don't like the initial burst. I'm going to wait until I see clean air.
Mountain clean.
No, not mountain cleans. Okay, so I don't know if you saw what happened then, but essentially the little piece of fiberglass thread blew off. It is quite an intense pulse that comes out of here. And unfortunately, the subsequent test that I did was not recorded because I ran out of space on my phone and I didn't recognize that that had happened. So actually what I did is I held a piece of string in a pair of pliers, and I then used that, and it was much more effective. And I can just draw with my mouse here. Essentially what I found was there was a flow that came around the outside of this and then came round the side here and then into the main string. And so effectively this airflow coming out here was creating a low pressure area here that was then pulling air in from all the way around the tube here. And so this resulted effectively, you could argue, in a mixing of the exhaust gases here with the gases coming from the outside of the device. And so, you know, this is completely unmodified generator, but surely this demonstrated that there was a gas mixing going on. Now, why would that not have been also the case with the standard generator? Well, I will show you why, and the innovation that we came up with to deal with this phenomena, and that was executed by my dear colleague, Alan Goldwater. So here we have, this is the flange that no one mentioned on there, and there is a video discussing this and the motivation for it. Hi, my name's Bob Grunier, and I'm a volunteer with Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So yesterday we observed with a piece of fiberglass filament on a stick that the airflow coming out here created a Bernoulli effect, and it drew in like a Dyson airblade air along here, and then it curled around, and it would seem to make it look like smoke was going in, but it was actually curling around and then going into the flow here. So what we have here, Alan has created this beautiful sheet of aluminium here, which is bound on there, and this will prevent this effect. Certainly, you might get a bit of draw in from this side, but this is largely equivalent to what you see on the stock exhaust, where this is our output here, and then they have this with a curl in it, and that will prevent that effect. So to try and make it like for light, like for light. So here we go. That's that. Then, wouldn't you know what happened? Sometimes you can't get a break. And in this case, we got a break, but it wasn't a break that we wanted. Because, as you may have been aware, during the time of our testing, and specifically on those 2 days, there was a solar ejection storm which resulted in very, very unusual aurora borealis. And as you can see, the Cirrus 2 is outside here, okay? And this is made of a glass reinforced plastic shell, non-conductive, non-EM shielding. And I went to bed with this covered up with a tarpaulin, as you saw in the following morning in the shot that you just saw. And when I woke up in the morning, Chris, up near where John Hutchison lives, had sent me images of the Bay Area taken by a friend of his down there with fantastic aurora borealis over the Bay Area, and some other ones slightly north of there. And when we turned this on in the morning, it was absolutely stone cold dead. Now, in all of my life, I've heard about these solar mass ejections, these solar storms, they're going to fritz electronics. And I always thought it was scaremongering. And it had totaled the power supply. It was so annoying. Now, we could get a new power supply. Alan ordered a new one. It's a fairly standard component. But unfortunately, its arrival time was after we were leaving. And so, you know, I would have thought it was a joke if someone had said this actually happened, but it really did happen. So, you know, what can I say? Anyway, we could do some further testing, which we did, and I'm going to show you some videos of those further testing now. So just give me a bit of time to cue those up. So essentially what I was saying earlier is, if you could imagine, this is the exhaust pipe. When I was bringing the thread up and it wasn't here, and I was bringing it up here, it was being pulled along this way. And if I moved it along, the edge would come round the edge of the exhaust pipe and then go into the stream. So there was a definite mixing going on. So there's two potential ways now. That one is that there is extra oxygen being synthesized by the water that's going in, by splitting the water, and somehow the hydrogen are getting captured into other elements, maybe making nitrogen 14, or they're making oxygen 17, or they're making sulfur, whatever. That potentially the hydrogen is being absorbed and leaving a little bit of extra O2 over that is causing a cleaner burn potentially, and also leaving more oxygen coming out. And possibly there is mixing going on. And so this is an identified way of mixing. We found a potential solution, and we were just unfortunate enough that we could not test and confirm that this removed that aspect of the mixing. So there was another aspect of the mixing that we had to explore, but we wanted to explore it with a essentially unmodified generator in California. And we did that. And I'm going to show you the videos of that testing, if I can. So bear with me. Okay, so I'm going to do this in a different way so that I can freeze frame whilst I'm doing it. If people haven't used this program before, I highly recommend it. It allows you to cut out pieces of video and merge pieces of video if they're recorded in the same way in a lossless format. Okay, so we did the testing we could, not the testing we wanted to do. Okay, so let's see what we see here. So I'm going to switch it so we can hear the audio, and I'm going to move my mic again. Right.
Thunderstorm generator, and we are trying to determine if we are still getting a inward propagating vortex into this system without these larger extension tubes that I've been using.
So Phil's just given a bit of the game away there, but that's okay.
Okay. You want to do string first? String first, then light up Rasta Hour over here. Okay, we are recording.
Sleep well, Beneficence TV. I don't know if anyone can see, maybe you can't, but of course I'm going to share the raw videos here. There's an injection of water here when this starts up. So here's me laughably showing you that with this flange on, there's no pulling of the threads on this side, obviously. But that shows that the flange is doing its job. So what I'm doing here is I'm seeing if there is any pulling from the sides in, you know, from a distance from the actual exhaust. And here, at this point, I'm getting quite close to the exhaust stream. So it does appear that the flange is very effective at stopping this effect. And of course, when I'm in the stream, it's almost instantly. So now I'm coming in the center line down from the top. Okay, so I think I need to step back here. Okay, this might be a bit tedious, but you're going to see me do this at the same time. Or you might not see me do it. Oh dear. This is actually 120 frames a second, this footage, so we might be here a while. I'll see if I can catch it. Not there. Not there. Okay, maybe there. Come on, give it to me. Not this time. Okay. No, not this time. Not this time. Not this time. You still with me? Okay, is it that time? Now you're having to see the sort of tedious stuff that I have to do sometimes. Okay, can you see it there? Can you see it? That string has been completely pulled into the tube. Can you see it? I'm going to step back. It's there. The string is coming down here. This point here, in fact, I'm going to do a screen grab of that. Okay, I'm going to do a screen grab of that. We can share that later. And then it gets ejected almost immediately. Okay, go back. Completely pulled in. Completely pulled in. Yes, Gordon Doherty. At that point in the exhaust, at that point, maybe only momentarily, there is a vacuum being pulled in. Ron Muckle, very good idea. Stick a one-way valve on the exhaust. Yes, it's not that simple, as you're going to see. But what I wanted to do in this test, and you'll see why, is to remove any doubt that it's unmodified and any doubt that there is flow coming in from the sides. So in this case, this would imply, at least for some part of the operation of this, there is an inflow into this. Why didn't you isolate the exhaust completely using a tube? Well, isn't that a great idea? I think you're going to find out that was done. Okay, because this is not a simple inflow. It's not a simple inflow. Okay, I could show you other examples, but you've seen how tedious it is to get that one. I'm going to share the raw videos for you to download, and you can find as many as you like. Okay? We'll play the rest of the video out, because we get smoke coming in later. Now, a Rankille's vortex has a vortex coming one way and a vortex going the other way. A tornado has a downdraft on the outside and an updraft in the center. Is it any surprise that a thing that's specifically designed to create a vortex creates a thing that works like a vortex? So you can see occasionally there are times when it goes in. Now, is this a backfiring process? Maybe. Look, there we go. So that has gone in. It's gone in. It's gone from being blown away to being pushed and sucked all the way in. Okay, and then immediately gets blown away. Okay, so sucked in, stays in for another 120th of a second, and then it's blown away. Okay, that is clearly being sucked in. Okay. So the implications would hooking up a fog machine. Oh dear. I'm going to play this out, and I think we've got more for you. So periodically you can see it sucking in. All right, I think you get the point, right? I think Phil now does the smoke testing here. He didn't bring any of these smoke pellets with him that he uses in the other testing you're going to see, because he was worried that they would think the TSA would find some problem with them, think they're explosives or whatever. So I had to come up with an alternative, which was this smoke. And to take the pain away, I'm going to show you that I already shared in the cover slide for today's presentation. Here, you can see there is smoke coming down here, but there is also smoke coming down in this frame and going into the exhaust at the top side here. Okay, going into the top side of the exhaust. So without going through the pain of that, there is going to be other cases where you can see the smoke going in. Okay. All right. So I think that's all we need to show there. Yes. Yes. Stuff gets sucked in. Right. Okay. So I've got two extremely clear examples there of this process occurring. Now I'm going to show you a series of videos. Now, when I saw these videos from Phil Dubois, there were serious modifications to the engine to achieve clarity in these videos. And therefore, I was very cautious in my consideration of it. And also because typically he was starting an engine afresh and it was cold. And we know that there's a lot of moisture being put in through the bubbler. So that's highly moist air. And obviously for every litre of petrol that you produce, you get, a litre of water or whatever, roughly speaking. Then there's going to be a lot of water formed, but it's going to be in the form of dry steam. But if for any reason that is condensing, then that dry steam will condense down 1,600 and something times its volume, and then that might cause a backdraft coming into the engine. So I wanted to remove that question by doing the test that we did, which was to run it and get it up to temperature. And so you saw Alan Goldwater come out in a different video and measure the temperature and see that it was well over 100 degrees. So there was no reason for considering that water would then condense. And so the actual pulling in periodically is a real thing, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, as I will explain, as I partially explained before, and I will explain at the end. So here I will bring up these other videos, which are here, I think. Whilst I'm looking for these, I'm just going to give you a quick interlude of this video. And I'm volunteering with the Multi-Fleischmann Memorial Project. So I've collected about 16 milligrams of samples like this one, segments from the inside. So this is the sample gathering. I'll publish this in a separate blog. Just have not had time. But essentially, this is me gathering the sulfur, and this will probably make Malcolm wince as I'm scraping off his wonderful Stonehenge from his 24-inch spear. But it provided a lot of samples, so I'm hoping a very accurate result will come from the finished beamline when they do that. So that was a whole bunch of the sulfur deposit at the top there. Is that sulfur deposit rich in 34/32? I don't know. So back to the main event. I will get Phil's videos. That is if I can find them. Yeah. Where did I put them? Is it even on here? Have you got any questions at this time? Does it lean out? That's I said that earlier. Potentially there is a leaning out process going on, and that needs to be discounted. Oh, where did I put them, Phil? Sometimes when you are traveling and you have vast amounts of videos, it's not always put in the right place. Not perfect. Give me a second. Oh, Lordy. Where are you? I don't think it's over there. Sorry, this is not my best minute. You do want to stick around for these. They're quite nice. You've done a good job. So, Mr. Dubois. What did I do with them? Oh, sorry, Gordon. You've got to go to bed, have you? Oh, well, you've missed some money shots, but that's okay. That's okay. Maybe everyone's going to miss them because I can't find them. Oh, dear. What did I do with them? Oh, I know where I put them. I put them here, didn't I? Here we go. Here we go. Don't leave yet. If you're still there, Gordon. Right. Some rather lovely videos here. So I think really the video itself speaks for itself. So I don't think we need particularly audio here. So let me just see which one's the. That's the 1st of May. That's the 5th of May. Okay. All right. So what Phil has done is he's attached a clear polycarbonate tube, I think it is, or a tube of some type. He's lighting this with some LEDs here, and he's rattling around in the background. Clearly the engine is cool, and he turns on the engine. I have to say, it's not running as smooth as the one he built in California. You can see water spitting out of the end here, so there is condensation going on there, or it's just removing the water that was in the tube beforehand. So by this point, there's no water droplets coming out here, so you can imagine that the thing might be up to temperature. I'll just take that back a bit. So you can see sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. You see? Clearly going in. Yes, it needs a muffler. Something I've said a lot. Okay, we'll go and have a look at the next one. Now it's interesting because when this is turned on, you can actually see the vortex of water coming out. So watch this. Right, can you see? The condensed water is coming out and it's actually drawn a spiral on here. So you can literally see the vortex. So a thing that's designed to create a vortex creates a vortex, not a surprise. There we go. So again, very clearly going in. Very clearly going in. Okay, next one. I'll cut to the chase here. Not so good, this test. Okay, so clearly going in there. Yeah.
See that.
There's a spiral on here marked with the smoke here. But as I showed you, that could be happening on the out as well as the in. Very clearly going in. Okay. And I could go on. Not the best one. Okay, that one's very clearly there. You see, coming in, sucking in all the way down, and then it puffs it back out. Puffs it back out, sucks it in, puffs it 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 out. Right, so I could go on. There's a lot of videos, and I have to thank Phil DeBoer for his very diligent testing here. I was unaware of these videos until after he turned up in California, and so I'm glad he told me about them so that we could do tests that would address any questions that the engine had been modified with a different resonant tuning effect. So we saw the same effect with a completely unmodified Thunderstorm generator without the flange on, and then with the flange on, and you can clearly see that the thing is going in, and that's a piece of string. It's not a little bit of smoke. But it does seem to pull in and then kick out, and pull in and kick out. And so I hypothesize that there is a tornadic structure that moves around like inside the tube. So if you've got the tube here and it's moving around like that, and that's the suck in, and sometimes it's stuck in a position and sometimes it moves. And so this is why you sometimes see it suck in and then pull out, and suck in and pull out, and sometimes it's stuck a little bit longer. And this happens with real tornadoes, and the turbulence is difficult to adjust and know precisely where it is. But if you were able to get your engine such that you're not in the blowout, but you're in the suck-in area, you're going to read, essentially, you're going to read atmospheric air. And so possibly, I'm not saying it is, but possibly this is where some errors in reading may have occurred, okay? In that it is essentially reading air. And only when you get the conditions right and you have the detector in the right place is it in the place where it's sucking in air. When you're not in the right place or the conditions aren't right, it's fluctuating and it's averaging out over a period of time, and you're getting somewhere between air and the actual original mix. But that being said, in our testing with the quadrupole mass spectrometer, you are clearly not seeing any hydrocarbons in there at all. Any, unburnt fractions, very little carbon, very little hydrogen in there. So in both cases, we were kind of having some mixing going on. Obviously, there was more mixing going on with the Thunderstorm generator. That could have played a role. Some of this sucking and blowing could have played a role. And that comes on to the last point here that I would like to make. Is this effectively acting to a degree, not necessarily entirely, and the isotopic data may show a different picture which we need to hold fire on. But is it potentially in this mode, not in the mode that's doing electronuclear collapse and electronuclear regeneration, which I don't think anyone's going to allow to be sold, let alone anyone to want to put on their engine. But in this mode, is it acting like an afterburner? It's sucking in some extra air and ensuring everything is burnt in there, in addition with the extra things that are known to occur with injection of water into engines. And you are literally getting a no carbon monoxide, lower NOx levels, and lower P10 and P5 particles, because it's kind of doing what a catalytic converter does. And a catalytic converter is only really burning what the most it can with the available oxygen that's left coming out of the engine, right? Whereas in the case of this, it could be additional oxygen from the water coming in, potentially catalytically burning in the Thunderstorm generator, and then the additional air that's being sucked in. And you know what? So who cares? If this device is able to produce clean air and not cause a significant or a measurable loss in performance or engine life, it's a win for the purposes that I would like to see it delivered in particularly the Indian market, which I know and love. So that essentially is the thought for the day in the case of the Thunderstorm generator. Smoke is out of the stream. By smoke, I mean P10, P5 particles and the nasty bits of carbon monoxide and NOx. Is it all dilution? I don't think so, because I think we would have seen and detected those unburnt hydrocarbons. We certainly detected, even with the modified engine, the Thunderstorm generator modified engine, when you turn it on and when you turn it off, particularly when you turn it off, if you go and look at the raw data that I have shared on remoteview.icu, you can see that when you turn it off, you see those unburnt hydrocarbons, but you do not see them when it is running with the Thunderstorm generator. So yes, it can detect those, even with whatever mixing you consider is going on, but not when it is in operation. So that is where we are. Clearly, a huge amount more testing needs to go, and there's no reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're still waiting on the isotopic data, and this potentially has a practical use in the market, and you don't necessarily have to think it's doing anything magic. It might be doing some catalytic work, a little bit lower down on the threshold scale of what so-called plasmoids, these toroidal geometries, are able to do. And at the conference, which I'm very looking forward to seeing you next week, I will be sharing more SEM data, regardless of whether the isotopic data comes in. I'm going to be sharing more SEM data that is just showing beautiful toroidal plasmoid structures that were generated in the 24-inch, well, in fact, I think it's in the inside of that structure. So the things are going on in there. One other test we would like to have done, but we again ran out of time, is that Alan Goldwater had a very old motorbike engine exhaust, and he was cutting that up and preparing it for us to look under the SEM to see if you see iron-rich crenellated spheres on the inside of an ordinary exhaust. This will be done in time. You know we are thorough about these things, but you know, if you've got any questions at this point, I would be very happy to take them. So I have to thank Phil for his very good and detailed work, and we will share these videos. You can analyze them as you wish. Creating waves. Bob, do you have footage from the glass geek from Henk? Would love to see it. That kind of experiment was put on pause. I know he's looking back at it now, so possibly in the future. I think, yes, I do have some footage. It didn't really do, you know, the geek is notoriously difficult to get working. And I know he had a little bit more success in getting it to do something interesting by modifying the rod that was in there, but it didn't do so much so far. So thank you very much, Craig. That's very kind of you. Really appreciate it. So True Herbsman, who are you most looking forward to hearing at the summit, Bob? I don't know whether I'm allowed to go and see any of the other presentations. I think I'm trapped in my own little silo, and that's it for me. So I'll probably, as a, I don't even know. I should have access to the streaming, so I can probably watch them later and I can review them later. But yeah, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to see any of the other presentations. Am Kingdom, the oxygen being expelled can be returned to the intake. No, yes. Well, firstly, we have to understand whether the oxygen is actually coming from the device running or it's coming from the air. But either way, yes, oxygen could be returned to the intake. Yeah, maybe I have a live stream package. Maybe I do. Maybe I could sit in my little silo and look at the streams in the room that's just next door. I think I'm expected to be in the room to answer questions, you know, on plasmoids and so forth. Yes, so Phil DeBra is, yeah, he mentions again the Rankiosh effect, which I talked about earlier, and saying that it will likely occur on any engine to a degree, I guess. Living Spirit Design said he can't wait for the results on the retrofitted truck. Yes, Malcolm's been sending out some preparation videos here. They're there on the truck there, and I think this is the truck there that's being retrofitted here. And of course, like it's for me, it's interesting to see this. It's nice to see, but you know, it's scientifically, is it doing everything that you would want to claim it's doing, or is it doing something that you need a product to do, which could be sold at an affordable price into a market? I would like it to do that. Have a device that is practically achieving a major cleaning up of a difficult to deal with pollution source. That is, for instance, the auto rickshaws and generators used all over India and in the subcontinent. And does it do it for a fraction of the cost of any other way? The other thing is that if this same kind of process occurs on the very much larger Thunderstorm generators, and it's able to ensure the full and complete burning of, for instance, on a 400 kVA generator, you can't get a catalytic converter for those devices. So, for instance, for Malcolm's main sponsors, they would like to produce more energy from, for instance, their waste gas sources and from natural gas sources at peak times to generate more money, but they can't because they're restricted by the carbon monoxide that's output from their engines. So if this solves this by ensuring the burn of the carbon monoxide, then it's done its job. So, that's it. So I think there'll be data that will be useful coming out of that. At the moment, I think it's very close to the stage of providing data. So Ruben Jessel says, what is the estimated cost? I think you're going to have to ask those questions to Malcolm. As you know, the MFMP is an independent testing body. That's why we were set up. That is our role. Thank you, Screwdriver Tuning. Thank you. Williams Schwant is explaining rich and lean very well, so I would look at his comment. So Vanilla Ice says, how do you stabilize a vortex in place at the exhaust? Well, you can see on the videos that I will share from Phil that sometimes it's relatively stable and sometimes it's not. You can see it sucking in and then it blows out, sucking in, it's blowing out. And I think in certain instances, it's like one of those traveling wave ignition rocket engines that are all the rage at the moment, where you're burning it around in a circle, okay? And you see this on real tornadoes. You see a sub-tornado that's kind of moving around the main tornado, okay? And like I say, tornadoes have a downdraft and then an updraft. And so maybe some of that's going on. Rifling is interesting. You mentioned that. I'll be talking about that with respect to another technology. Thank you, Daz Pizzazz. Very much appreciate that. It really, really helps. Yes, 3D printing has been considered. I even suggested it in a meeting with the people that are currently manufacturing the devices. Specifically because they were considering using Inconel, which I don't think is necessary. But I know that the direct laser metal sintering technology that I visited in 2013, I think, in the UK, they could print in Inconel. Have you had access to I can't read the bottom, but coal power generator to test the Thunderstorm generator? I haven't seen favorable results on a coal power generator as yet. They might exist at some point in the future. Thank you, Lithnik. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Black Tie. Very much appreciated. So William Schwant is suggesting putting a twist on the exhaust pipe and saying that Schauberger did that. And he's suggesting more to taper the exhaust to get more back pressure too. I do think that the exhaust hole was very much smaller on the unmodified generator. Regardless of the baffle and the baffle shape, it had a much smaller exhaust hole. So, maybe that is something that could be tried on its own. So Shankat says, why does the sphere heat up and from combustion or eddy currents in the conductive shell materials? It could be a bit of both. And I'm arguing that there could be also some afterburning effect going on as well if there is air drawn in through the exhaust. So Laura says, if it was a vortex rotating within the pipe, why wouldn't it constantly breathe in? It may be. It may be constantly breathing in, but the bit that's breathing in is rotating around, like I say, like a traveling wave ignition rocket engine. Yeah, and sometimes, like in some of Phil Dubois' testing, it was fairly stable and then it moved away. So it might, it's just tornadoes do. Go and look at tornado videos. Sometimes they're relatively stable, and for no explicable reason, they start to move again. Lionel says, Bob, can you test by having the exhaust output into a large tanker full of noble gases? I might have to invoke James Griggs here. He said, I'm not trying to be cute or something like that. But he says, I'll do any test you want to pay for. Knowing how much it costs to do these tests, because you have to get the right people, the right equipment in the right place, and everything has to work and not break like it did with the solar ejection or whatever it was. What is your logic with that? So Lion Hunter is suggesting putting the exhaust into a tanker full of noble gas. I don't think this is gravity. The string is absolutely clearly and categorically sucked in to the tube and then blown back out. So pure oxygen is that's the beauty of an internal combustion engine. A part of its fuel is actually in the air. It breathes. That's not true of some other engine or powertrains, rather. Tammy, it might be pulsed. It might be pulsed. It might be some condition. We share the videos, and you can listen to the sound of the engine. You can compare the sound of the engine to when you see the string or the smoke or whatever pulled in, or to when you see it moving from a fairly static place to a more dynamic place. There is a lot of work that can be done just by breaking down the videos that have been captured by Phil and myself and by Phil previously. Yeah, they'll it's like a Helmholtz resonator. There's some out and in. And this was the point where, when Phil did show me those videos in California, I said, well, you're going to be changing the resonance by adding a tube on there. And so we can't have that as a coloring the potential importance of this finding. So we need to do it with an unmodified Thunderstorm generator stock without anything on it. And we saw essentially the same basic effect, which it's unsurprising that a thing that's meant to cause vortices create vortices. So creating awareness says what I need. The bulb should not be ionizing. It's using one of those lamps that you use for tortoises or for reptiles. It's a standard reptile light, and it's the type of light that's meant to allow them to make vitamin or whatever it is in their flesh, but it's not an ionizing bulb. I discussed the type of bulb and the frequencies of light in there in my presentation in Zurich. I want to teach Bob to drift one day. Well, that would be nice. I have actually done handbrake turns in the Honda Activan. That was fun. We rolled it. And I have done, donuts until the police came along one day. That was a long time ago in my naughty youth. I've raced through forests as well. That's fun. Trying to dodge trees. Okay, so I'm probably going to call it a night. I have a lot to do this week. So, yeah, we're still waiting on the isotopic data. There's going to be more SEM data shared at the conference this coming week. So there's potentially some very exciting stuff and some extremely exciting stuff going to be shared. How do I feel about our testing? Well, the point about being an independent tester is you say what you see. And we may be wrong in the interpretation, but it does look like it cleans the burn. What component of the cleaning of the burn is because of the water injection, any bubbling going on, any energizing from a UV light, and any vorticity. I would hope that just water injection and vorticity achieves the effect with the apparent potential sucking in of additional air, which could lead to potentially an afterburning effect, which, this would maybe explain the carbon-14 data. If you've constantly got air from the outside coming in, possibly explains the carbon-14 data. It wouldn't, in my view, explain an anomaly in sulfur 34 over 32, nitrogen 15 over 14, and carbon 13 over carbon 12. But we have to see what that data is. And but the big takeaway from me is potentially this afterburning, cleaning burning of the air is something that could simply replace a catalytic converter in places that a catalytic converter cannot be made or is uneconomical to install, and clean up the cities and improve the lives of hundreds of millions of our fellow humans. So with that, I will say thank you very much for your time, and I will see you in the next video. Buenas noches, dobronoc. Good night.